So, in terms of customer success, what we do, we're a small team at Jadu, but essentially our role is working with you to help you get the best out of your platform implementation. No matter what product mix you have, we're there to provide advice and guidance and help you get the most out of it. Collectively, between us as a team, although we're a small team, we actually, between us, have decades of experience of using Jadu, with a number of us actually having used Jadu from both sides of the fence. So we have, real world experience of actually using the platform out in the wild, and then experience within Jadu of working with our customers to help you understand and get the most out of your platform and help you solve problems effectively. So, sort of as a really high-level overview, the kind of things that we do is we'll provide advice and guidance on all elements of the platform. So form building, if you've got particular things you're trying to do with forms and you're not quite sure what the best way to do it is, or you just want a little bit of guidance or sort of pointing in the right direction, we can help with that. Developing workflows, if you're a Connect customer and you're looking at building out sort of potentially complex workflows within the platform, again, that's something we can help provide advice and guidance on. Sort of more general stuff that sits around the edges, like content strategy, writing usable content, those things that aren't necessarily, focused on the platform, but they're there and they're things that sit around the edge that help you actually make the platform a success and make your websites and your services successful. And of course, there's just the general knowledge and experience that we have overall of the platform. We also work and provide a lot of our training and workshops. So if any of you have done any of the online training courses or have had any face-to-face training, it's more than likely have come from one of us. So we developed the online training that most people now take. We also deliver face-to-face training courses, either directly on-site or via webinars. We can do workshops around content. So we can do content workshops in terms of looking at your content and your user experience on the website, or in terms of your forms and processes, and help provide advice and guidance around how you can build on that experience that you've already developed to really improve it using the tools within the platform to their best effect. And we also will do bespoke workshops. So if there's something particular that you want us to look at that isn't a standard training course or a standard workshop that we offer, we're always happy to sit down and look at what your requirements are and develop something bespoke for you. If you're a Jadu Connect customer, you'll have a nominated customer success consultant that you'll have regular calls with. We normally aim to have calls, most customers like them either monthly or quarterly, depending on how often you need our help and advice and guidance. But those calls are really a chance for us to talk with you, to understand, what cool stuff you're actually doing, because we're always interested in that, but also what challenges you're facing. Are there any particular questions that you have about the platform? When we're thinking about challenges, not necessarily there have to be challenges in terms of using the platform. They could be challenges that you have internally that are preventing you from getting the best out of the platform. So it might be internal engagement issues, things like that. Customers who don't have Jadu Connect, you also have the ability to get in touch with the customer success team, and where they can provide you with advice and guidance on using the content management system, using forms. And as I said, those things around the edges, around content strategy, creating useful, effective user journeys on the website. One thing that we've instigated really in the last 12 months is we actually run monthly free masterclass webinars online. I think we've done about 10 of them so far. What we try and do with these is focus on a very specific area of the platform and do a real deep dive into that particular functionality to improve your knowledge internally. We'd like these to be customer driven. We have ideas about what we'd like to talk about, but what we'd much rather know is what you'd like to look at in terms of a webinar. The webinars, as I said, they're held monthly. Anyone can sign up for them who's a Jadu customer. If you're unable to attend the webinar, we also publish them online after the fact so that you can go back and review them. And there's a full history on YouTube of all of the masterclasses that we've run so far. And these run from everything from developing workflows for content approval through to more complex concepts like interrelated cases within Jadu Connect. Yeah. Right, so just moving on, one of the other things that we do in customer success, if you need a slightly longer engagement, you have particular requirements that you need more sort of deep dive help with, we also provide professional services. And I was going to run through 3 examples of things that we've recently done with customers to give you an idea of some of the more detailed work that we can do. So one of them is in relation to team upskilling. So we had one customer recently that, over time and with staff churn, they found themselves in a position where they had a completely new team at the authority who'd had little to no experience of using Jadu, but suddenly found themselves as owners of the platform. So they came to us, obviously with a lot of questions around what the platform was even and what they could do with it. So what we suggested was actually doing some direct engagement with them to help upskill the team. So beyond just the standard training courses, actually going in and spending some time with the team to help them get up to speed very quickly. Because as a new team that were in the situation where there was a lot of live Jadu processes and forms already there, that they were having tickets coming in for updates and changes. It was really essential to try and get that team up to speed very quickly. They completed the standard Jadu training, so they went through the online training for our foundation courses, and we delivered face-to-face practitioner courses for them. But then beyond that, we spent time directly on site with them, with the team, looking at those tickets that they had coming in with change requests for forms and processes, and helping them to understand how to look at those in terms of the key things they'd need to be aware of when they were trying to understand what an issue was, particularly as these were processes and forms that they hadn't had any experience or knowledge of previously. We also spent time with them, talking them through the processes that we tend to follow when we do an end-to-end process development with a customer, so that they could take those skills forward and use sort of our process to help implement with teams within the organization. So the first part of that work with them led to that team having sort of much more increased product knowledge, but also gave them a lot more confidence for them to be able to go out in the business and offer Jadu as a solution when internal customers were looking for new processes and forms. After a little while, they came to us and they said that they had a need, that they wanted to develop a form and an online process for managing household waste recycling centre bookings. They had quite a need for this in that they wanted to control the volume of visits. They wanted to find a way of limiting the amount of restricted waste items that people could bring to the recycling centres. They had big issues with commercial waste organisations turning up at domestic recycling centres and trying to use them. And a lot of unnecessary contact going to and fro between the contact centre and people trying to use the recycling centres. So initially they approached us saying, could you build this for us? Which we could have done. But actually, we flipped it on its head a little bit on the basis that this was a team that were in the process of upskilling as well. So we said, well, actually, why don't you build it and we will spend time with you helping to facilitate that process. So we'll help you manage the workshops. We'll review what it is that you're designing and what you're building. But effectively, you do the work and you can use that as a learning experience as well. So the team themselves went away, decided that they liked that approach. They paid for a small number of professional service days for us to help work with them. We facilitated the first workshop with the service area to help them understand what the requirements were for what they needed to build. And then we stepped away and left them to it. About a week later, they came back to us and said, here's what we've documented, what we're going to build. We reviewed that, and we followed that iterative process until they got to the point where they had a process that they could go in and build out for the service area, that the service area had signed off. Now, they launched that service on the 26th of March to the public with very little PR. I think they put a news story in the local paper, and that was about it. But by the 1st of June, they had nearly 115,000 online recycling centre bookings. On the basis that one of their main goals was to reduce unnecessary contact and encourage self-service, of those 115,000 bookings, only 99.4% were made directly by self-service. A huge amount compared to their contact centre, which was 0.4%. So immediately, huge shift from unnecessary contact to the contact centre to customers self-serving themselves. What they also did, unknown to us, the team themselves went in and built a load of Power BI dashboards, taking data from Jadu Connect directly into Power BI so they could actually visualize and get immediate reporting on what was going on at the recycling centres. One thing that they're looking at doing next, in fact, Andy mentioned this on his presentation earlier, is integration with their AMPR solution. So their vision at the moment is actually making an appointment at the recycling centre should be a completely contactless experience. You should be able to make that booking by self-service online, turn up at the recycling centre, the barrier goes up because it recognises your number plate, you get rid of your items and you leave without any need to actually have any direct contact. It's a complete 360 self-service experience. They're currently in the process of testing, but they're aiming to get that final phase of integration live sort of within the next few weeks. Just one example of work that they've done. Another example of something that we've done in the customer success team, we can also help with things like migration. So we have a lot of customers that come to us who suddenly have deadlines. They need to get something done by a particular deadline, and they often ask for us to have a sort of input into that and to give them a bit of help. So we had a customer that came to us that was migrating to Jadu, who had a very strict deadline that they needed to migrate all of their online forms within. So from the existing platform that they had into Jadu with associated workflows in Jadu Connect. There was a limited amount of experience of Jadu within their team, so they immediately had, something that they could fall back on, but they wanted our help to help with that implementation, to help them meet their deadline. So within a very short time period, we worked with them to migrate 300 forms approximately from their existing supplier into Jadu. They had a desire, as I mentioned, to then have associated case types within Jadu Connect, their vision being that actually they wanted to capture everything in Connect, even if it was just at that stage a very simple process that they were building. So the way that we worked was that at Jadu, in the customer success team, we built the online forms for them, and the team at their end then built the workflows that they wanted to use to capture the data in Jadu Connect. The result was that the forms were all migrated well ahead of the deadline. We actually had a whole sign-off process that involved the individual services within the organisation as well. As we migrated the forms, instead of just lifting and shifting what they had, we actually looked at those forms and determined actually what's the best way to rebuild those forms. How can we use the tools that they have in Jadu compared with the tools that they had in their previous platform to get the best out of Jadu, but also how can we make improvements to those forms in terms of usability, things like accessibility, Even just things like actually taking the customer into account in terms of language that was used in some of the questions. So actually the form's got a full end-to-end rebuild using standard accessibility guidance. And we also use things like the GDP, Government Digital Service, GDS design guide for actually informing how we built the forms as well. Last case study that we've got was actually in terms of us working with the customer to develop a solution for them. So we had a customer that wanted to build a recruitment service. They had a desire to build, in this case it was for schools, a recruitment service that they could offer to schools. So schools could request a job advert and then actually pay for a service for either the team within the organisation to manage the recruitment process from end to end, or for it to be devolved directly to the school itself, with the whole process being managed within Jadu Connect. Initially, this seemed like quite a complicated ask. We know that they'd been out, they'd looked at various out-of-the-box recruitment solutions, and they found that the one thing they kept running up against was the fact that none of those solutions seemed to take into account a desire to actually do recruitment on behalf of someone else, and then devolve that in terms of permissions. So we demoed something that we built for a previous customer in terms of a basic recruitment process, talked about their requirements, and thought, actually, you could build that in Jadu. So as a professional service, we went in and we spent time understanding their requirements, and we built the end-to-end process for them, right from the point where the school would request a job advert and pay for it, and pay for the level of service that they wanted. There was all sorts of additional complexities around that in terms of things like subscription levels and various things. But right from that point, right through to the point where the school actually appointed someone to the role that they'd advertised, with the ability for the school to actually manage that process directly in Connect themselves without seeing anybody else's job applications. We actually managed to build it just using out-of-the-box features. No custom development, no integration, just standard out-of-the-box features within the platform. And it actually ended up consisting of about 4 or 5 interlinked workflows. So if anyone's been to the masterclass on interlinked workflows, you'll know kind of what the principle is behind that. But there is a notion in Jadu Connect that you can have workflows that talk to each other. So we used that quite significantly. So there was a workflow for managing the job advert, one for managing job applications, even a workflow that allowed us to capture application details. So if the applicant came back to apply for a second job, we could pre-fill their application form based on a previous application that they made and then update those details. There was a workflow for data monitoring. So they could do all of their sort of application monitoring in terms of things like equal opportunities monitoring. We used the organisation features in Jadu Connect as a key way of being able to manage the devolvement of those job applications so that each school could only see its own job applications but could go in and manage them quite happily. We also used the Jadu access codes feature to ensure security around things like being able to provide job references and making sure that they got associated with the correct application in a situation where actually the referees wouldn't have direct access to a case to be able to directly upload it. But thank you for your time.